So I was assigned the chapter 18 on humanistic psychology and developmental theory. The chapter starts off talking about psychology, and there's a basic introduction to it. They specifically refer to the word psyche and explain the Greek word's meaning, it being soul or life principle. And if we look at the word psyche as defined by the English language, we see that it is very similar in that it means the human soul, mind, or spirit. I incorporated these pictures as visuals to kind of give myself, not only myself, a sense of what this would look like in terms of a visual, but also to help others to see what these would mean if they couldn't understand them. So the top picture would show what the human soul would mean to me, where from the center of our bodies, pretty much near the center where our heart is, that is where our soul kind of radiates from. And if we look at the bottom picture on the left, that's a picture of where the mind is located in the body and how it kind of radiates throughout the body. So the mind is kind of the central hub for the body. And in the last picture, when it comes to the word spirit, there's different ways you can interpret that word. And for me, the way I can interpret it with a picture, a visual, was through this picture where it kind of shows your whole body and it being radiating from every single point outward and maybe even inward. So that's your whole spirit. Since the 16th century, Western philosophers have been more interested in studying the mind, more specifically how the mind perceives objects, forms memories, associates ideas, and also makes judgments. During the later part of the 19th century, there was a separation of psychology from philosophy, and one of the most noted figures of this change was Wilhelm Wundt. Wilhelm Wundt was a German philosopher, physiologist, physician, and professor. He is known today as one of the founding figures of modern psychology. He greatly admired the accomplishments of the more prominent sciences such as physics, chemistry, and other natural sciences, but he ultimately wanted psychology to be just as admirable. He tried to make psychology a scientific discipline by analyzing consciousness into its basic elements. He basically suggested that psychology strive for some of the similar ways in which other sciences analyze things. He believed that psychology should focus on analyzing a person's subjective experience of the world and mind, how someone perceives the world through their thoughts, through their feelings, through the way they see the world, and how their mind processes those things. By the end of the 1920s, the behaviorists kind of took over the scientific investigation. They kind of intercepted this from a direction that he was taking. They wanted to take it in a different direction. So the behavior stance. The behaviors, they looked at overt behavior and the way it is controlled by the observable stimuli in the external environment. They felt that this was more practical than what Wilhelm wanted to try and do. They believed that because mental processes cannot be directly observed, that there was no place for them in scientific psychology. And they basically saw this as psychology going back to the concept of souls and mysticism and not anything that's real practical. The behaviors made great contributions, and a lot of these things had to do with techniques that improved learning, alleviated fears, temper tantrums, and other problems. When I saw temper tantrums, I kind of thought that the authors of the book, or wherever they had gotten this from, was kind of making fun of that, because if I think of a temper tantrum, I think of a child being obnoxious and getting upset about something and making a scene, quote unquote. But this was something that I guess was part of the things that they could figure out how to do, probably with rewards and punishments and such, and those types of things. So I had this little picture on the bottom: behaviorism gone wrong. Give me my reward and no one gets hurt. I thought that was kind of funny. So when the behaviorists started taking over and started to look at things the way they were looking at them, there were starting to be a lot of arguments against the behaviorist stance because, especially the humanistic psychologists started to see behaviorism as producing a very one-sided picture of nature, human nature. And by doing this, they were kind of ignoring the things that made people unique and gave them dignity. Some humanistic psychologists that were part of this opposition were Gordon Allport, Carl Rogers, and Abraham Maslow. And they basically believe that, people also grow, they think, they feel, they dream, and they do many of the things that make up the human experience. And with this human experience being very individualistic, as the way I see things and think about them and feel, and how my dreams, what my dreams are, may be very different from someone else's, and no two people are going to experience things in the exact same way. This kind of formed the humanistic movement in psychology, which was around the 1950s. And this resulted in response to the behaviorist-oriented approach of focusing too much on seeing people as exclusively controlled by the external environment. This also was sort of a result in response to the psychoanalytic view of people as being dominated by irrational forces in the unconscious. So basically, the humanists propose that people, to a much greater extent than has been realized, are free and creative beings capable of growth and actualization. One of the main leaders of the movement was Abraham Maslow, and he did recognize behaviorism and the psychoanalysis as two main forces. He knew that those were things that were heavily studied, heavily researched, and heavily looked to when it came to psychology. But he wanted humanistic psychology to also be part of that, and so he labeled humanistic psychology as the third force. Here's Abraham Maslow. He would be considered the father of humanistic psychology. He was born and raised in Brooklyn. His parents had immigrated from Russia, and he had attended the City College of New York, and also Cornell University, and University of Wisconsin is where he finished his bachelor's degree and graduate schooling. He did teach at Brooklyn College and the Brandeis University, and was considered a clinical psychologist, and he did treat clients. He did conduct anthropological fieldwork among the Blackfoot Indians in Alberta, Canada, and the text does not really specify what exactly he did with the Blackfoot Indians, but that would be probably something that would be interesting to look into. I used this picture of him with a quote because, well, first of all, I thought he looked like a very happy guy. He looked like a humanist to me if I had to think of what one would look like. And his quote says, "What is necessary to change a person is to change his awareness of himself." I feel like it's very relevant to humanistic psychology in general, but also to our program in counseling here at Sac State, because I feel like all of these classes that we've been taking this first semester, especially the self-identity, power, and privilege class, that this is something that is being kind of ingrained in us to become more aware of ourselves, will bring great change to us and also to those that we serve. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Maslow believed that people had an inner life and they had potentials for growth and creativity and free choice. And he wanted psychology to go beyond the rational science. He ultimately wanted to incorporate various ways of knowing. And some of these ways of knowing included some Eastern philosophies of practice. One of the ideas that he was largely known for was this new theory of motivation in 1943, basically suggesting that people have 6 kinds of needs. Physiological needs, things like breathing, food, water. They needed to have balance in their physiologically, and safety. People needed to make sure that they were protected from the outside. They had resources, they had family, they had health. Safety to protect maybe their core. They had needs for love and belonging, friendship, family. And they had need for esteem, self-esteem, confidence, respecting themselves, respecting others, and being respected by other people as well. And at the highest point is self-actualization, including morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem-solving, lack of prejudice, acceptance of facts. This is the highest need that he felt people were trying to reach. And unless the other needs, kind of because it went from the bottom to the top, without having all your needs met, you would probably never get to this point, and not many people do or have. The self-actualization was one of the needs that he was most interested in. He borrowed it from Goldstein, 1939, and he refers to actualization as one of one's potentials, capacities, and talents. He studied this by researching the most healthy and creative people he could find. Some of the research samples included anthropologist Ruth Benedict, Thomas Jefferson, and also Eleanor Roosevelt. Some of the key findings he was able to derive from his research of self-actualizers is that compared to most people, self-actualizers have maintained a certain independence from their society. They have been less conforming, not in a bad way, but in a way that kind of shows that they've been less flattened by a social environment, less defeated, less kind of held down, and are more spontaneous, free, and natural. And these people are primarily motivated by their inner growth and the development of their potentials and their personal mission in life. These are kind of cool pictures to kind of show what a self-actualizer, what some characteristics would maybe look like from a visual perspective. And in the first picture is, I don't know if you can kind of see for yourself what the picture is kind of depicting, showing that independence, that spellboundness to, move away from what you've been told and what you've been taught and what society has been showing you to do and say and be a part of, and kind of go on to your own and do your own thing. And the second picture kind of shows enchantment, a little bit of spellboundness, and finding pure delight in what is. And the last picture is kind of looking at self-actualizer as going beyond conventional ways of order and experience. Looking at things, looking at yourself from a different perspective, looking at other people from a different perspective, compared to what others would typically do. These 3 people are the ones that were included in the study. Eleanor Roosevelt, Ruth Benedict, and Thomas Jefferson. And I have some quotes that I'm going to read that were supposed to be part of the Sorry, I had to step away for a second. I was looking for my quotes that I had with me here. So I had some quotes that I was going to bring to class, and they were, I was going to have everyone pick one and read from it. And these quotes, and I won't read them all because there's a lot of them, I wanted everyone to read them and get a sense, I guess make their own interpretation of it, in the way they would feel about them or think about them when they would read it. This one's kind of long. I really like it though. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I have lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. That was from Eleanor Roosevelt. Here's one from Thomas Jefferson. He who knows best knows how little he knows. Here's another one from Eleanor Roosevelt. One's philosophy is not best expressed in words. It is expressed in the choices one makes, and the choices we can make are ultimately our responsibility. Eleanor Roosevelt. People grow through experience if they meet life honestly and courageously. This is how character is built. That was a really great one for our program in general. Here's one from Ruth Benedict. And this I think is very relevant to multicultural counseling. The adequate study of culture, our own and those on the opposite side of the globe, can press on to fulfillment only as we learn today from the humanities as well as from the scientists. And I think I'll end with this one, because this one is really, really relevant to what we're being taught here through this program and what we should take with us when we become counselors. It is not fair to ask of others what you are not willing to do yourself. So Maslow's overall position was that humans possess an essential biological inner nature, which includes all of the basic needs and the impulses towards growth and self-actualization. The inner core is partly species-wide, meaning we all have an inner core that's very similar, or even the same, but it's also partly idiosyncratic, which basically means it's very individual, distinctive, special, and unique. For we all have special bents, and bents meaning tendencies, dispositions, or inclinations, and temperaments and abilities. So a developmentalist and intrinsic growth forces is basically refers to the concepts of maturation opposed to a biological core that directs growth. Maturation is an internal mechanism that prompts children to seek out certain experiences at certain times. So underneath this maturational urging, children basically regulate their cycles of sleep and eating, learn to sit, up, walk, run, and develop an urgent need for autonomy, to master language, and explore the widening environment. These are some developmental theorists as humanist, Rousseau, and Montessori, and Giselle. And basically, they were all searching for an inner force that will guide the individual towards a healthier, more independent development. I like Rousseau's quote, "We should not teach children the sciences, but give them a taste for them." And my interpretation of this is, let's expose a child to the sciences and let them see for themselves if they like it or if they want to do anything further with it. Some developmentalists who were in opposition, and these P.J. Kohlberg and some the cognitive developmentalists, they all kind of had some doubt that the biological maturation that directly governs the stages of cognitive development, but they did share the humanist faith in intrinsic capacities for self-directed learning. In reference to the biopsychosocial framework, and from a humanistic perspective, the biological maturation is an internal mechanism. So, from the biological force of maturation, a child's internal mechanism prompts them to seek out certain experiences at certain times. In terms of psychological force, from a humanistic perspective, there becomes an urgent need for autonomy, mastering language, and exploring the widening environment. There's an inner growth that's important to meet one's needs, and this is an outcome of that. In terms of psychological force, there's a socialization and how socialization affects development. And in this case, an example would be as children become socialized, they may quit relying on their own experiences and judgments, and they may become too dependent on conventions and the opinions of others. And that is all I have for my presentation. For those of you who took the time to listen to my presentation, I appreciate it. And I did include my summary for those who maybe didn't have the time today or before our exam to listen to my presentation. But I am glad that I was able to do this. Unfortunately, I was able to do it in class, but that's okay. I want to say thank you to all of you for sharing everything you have during this semester, and I'm excited to go forward with you into the next semester. Okay, thank you.